angle between two vectors. Suppose we have the vectors a and b, and let us introduce another definition of scalar product, which we will use to find the angle between the two vectors. The scalar product of the vectors a and b is equal to the magnitude of the vector a times the magnitude of the vector b times cosine alpha. Here alpha is the angle between the vectors a and b. In fact, there are two possible angles between two vectors, but we define the angle between the two vectors to be the one smaller than 180 degrees. So, this is the alternative definition of scalar product, which we will now use to find the angle between the vectors a and b. From the formula, we have cosine alpha is equal to the scalar product of vectors a and b over the product of the magnitude of the vector a and the magnitude of the vector b. As we are given the vectors a and b, we can easily find their magnitudes and their scalar product. The length of vector a is equal to square root of the sum of 2 squared, minus 2 squared, and 3 squared. So, the length of the vector a is equal to square root of 17. Similarly, the length of the vector b is equal to square root of 6. So, we get cosine alpha is equal to the vector 2 minus 2 3 times the vector 1 2 minus 1 over square root of 17 times square root of 6. Using the definition of scalar product, we get 2 times 1 plus minus 2 times 2 plus 3 times minus 1 over square root of 17 times 6. So, cosine alpha is equal to minus 5 over square root of 102. Now, we are left to find the angle alpha, which is the angle between the two vectors. Notice that there are two possibilities for the angle alpha. It is either less than 90 degrees or more than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees, as we know the angle between the two vectors is defined as the smallest angle between them, so the one less than 180 degrees. So, alpha needs to be something between 0 and 180 degrees. To find alpha, we need to find the arccosine of minus 5 over the square root of 102. And we know our cosine has a value between 0 and pi, so its value will be exactly the angle between the two vectors. Let us use a calculator to find the value. So, we get it's equal to 119.7, correct to 4 significant figures.